everybody, how you doing? Alexx Calise here. Thank you for joining us for an all-new episode of my brand new podcast where we discuss everything music and entertainment. Today I have a very special guest with me. He is a longtime friend of mine. Please welcome to the show, Mr. Rob Johnson.
Thank you, Alexx.
It's just us, so. Rob, please tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us about all of your years in the music industry.
Well, let's start out by just establishing the fact that I'm really old. Yeah, I started out in rock and roll going back to the late 70s. And so I basically did rock and roll and lots of cover bands and lots of original bands. Then I sort of fell into musical theater in kind of the late 80s, in my mid-20s. We did a lot of producing in my shows. Some of my shows got produced throughout the country at like community theaters mainly. And then in the late 90s, I had a friend who said, hey, I'm really thinking of going to Hollywood and, kind of doing music for picture. And I'm like, I didn't really know anything about that. It was like, what? There's music in that stuff? So he sort of came out and I sort of followed him. And in the meantime, back in Boston, most of my adult life was lived in Boston. I lived in a few other towns like Denver and Kansas City, but the majority of it was in Boston. He was a Boston guy. And then once he, said that, I scored some films and did some sort of industrials, as they call them, and scored them, provided music for, health videos, things of this nature. And then I came out to Hollywood in late 2000, just started doing, kind of student films, indie features, lots of documentaries. And then I sort of started doing production music. It really wasn't happening for me, but I just started accumulating, I wanted to start a music library. So I just started, writing tracks. By around 2008, and you and I have talked about this, it sort of exploded, the sort of reality cable TV show explosion of, that time. And they just needed a lot of music. And we both got in. You were more doing the artist thing, and I was just like, hey, I'll just crank out, production tracks. I wasn't too proud. And I had, when all that started, I already had like 100 tracks. And then once I got picked up and I saw my tracks were landing in a ton of TV shows, I was thrilled. I mean, I was just so psyched. And I just dedicated my whole life, my whole work life to that. After about a year or two, I was making enough to actually, pay my bills and make a living. So I just went in full time, and this is about 2009, 2010. And ever since, I've just been doing that, just music licensing and mainly for TV shows. But I get my stuff in a lot of sports, NFL, NBA, and NHL.
So basically what you're saying is you had a lot of luck, especially in the sync world. And it's through music licensing companies, as far as what I've heard.
Correct.
And how did you get into that? How did you hear about music licensing agencies?
It's kind of hard to remember. I think they were just popping up online. I guess I was searching for them. I mean, I probably Googled music libraries was kind of the thing. Like, get into a music library. I think I heard some of my contemporary composer friends, it's like, you got to get with a good library. So I just started Googling, music libraries. And a lot of them were just accepting, basically just send them your MP3s, maybe your best 3 tracks or something like that. And in those days, and I don't think it was because I was amazing or anything. It was just like, they weren't super picky. They were like I was getting signed by basically everybody, because, it was like, oh, I guess this is good enough. Because a lot of it was, the cable shows, the Honey Boo Boos, whatever.
Yeah.
It's like they're not getting like ridiculously picky. I mean, it's just basically, background wallpaper music. I mean, a lot of times I did get some themes for these shows, which is, out front stuff, which is super cool. So I just submitted to a ton of music libraries that I found online. Like, yeah, they were just there, you just Google them and there they were. And then I just sent them my music and they just started signing me.
We discussed earlier how 2007, 2008, it was like the golden era of music licensing because we both got into the licensing game around that time. We didn't know each other back then. How did we meet, Rob?
I put an ad for a singer, and you replied, and then it all started from there.
It was a Craigslist thing.
It was a Craigslist thing, yeah.
But we both got involved with the licensing game around like 2007, 2008.
Yeah.
And it was the same thing for myself. I had submitted to many of them, and a lot of them had accepted my material, and I was just able to license my music to a whole bunch of different shows. So it was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
I think I found those agencies similarly by just doing a cursory Google search.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know anybody really in that arena. So what's kind of nice about licensing agencies in particular is that you don't necessarily have to submit all of that music to a music supervisor. If you didn't have that agency representing you, you would have to, build relationships with all of these people that place music into film and TV.
Right. Yeah, the music library, I'm a confessed introvert. I'm not the guy working the Hollywood parties. And, I knew I had some music supervisor opportunities, and they were great. And, but the music library thing it was so perfect, because it was like, it wasn't about anything but submitting the music. And if they liked it, you were signed. You didn't have to schmooze. You didn't have to do anything. It was just like, let the music do the talk. And if the music's good enough, we'll say good enough.
Right.
We'll sign you. So it was introvert paradise, and they had I had a lot of briefs, which are basically when they ask you, we need this, that, or music that sounds like whatever. And which is great, because you sort of point you in a direction. I think people who do my kind of thing are kind of versatile people. They can kind of, do jazz, rock, whatever, musical theater, whatever they ask for, you can probably do a fair, okay version of, of that thing. And I think a lot of people that I got started with, they wanted something that wasn't so generic.
Right.
So I thought, well, I'll just be that guy who just does like rock with a lot of, not too overly considered. You know what I mean?
You're like unoffensive rock.
Yeah, something. No, more actually totally offensive rock. No, I was the guy who's doing offensive rock, or as much as you could get away with. It wasn't exactly, the Dead Kennedys or anything.
Right. And we've tried like hell to go outside of our own comfort zones, you and I.
Yes.
Especially, I think it was like a year or two ago, we're like, you know what, screw it. Let's try to write more modern sounding music. And you and I are so
we're super old school people.
We're super old school, and we tried like hell to make it happen. But that's another thing too, is specializing. Like, for example, with yourself, like you're very much like that throwback. I don't want to say garage rock sound, but at least from what I've gathered, you're very good at that. You're great at the musical stuff. If you are trying to get into music licensing, it's kind of like stick to your, I don't want to say stay in your lane, specialize.
Yeah, and I think of like, I'm a weird combination. Like, I do like garage rock, but I like musical theater, and those two things don't make sense to most people, because one is just nasty and offensive, and one is like nice and melodic and pretty and sophisticated. But it's whatever. It was just like my bag of tricks. And these are bag of tricks that are sort of based upon, for some reason, I like these things. Now, if I had to give anybody advice, it's like, if you hear something on TV that sounds like something you can do, that's a really good sign. Because I think that's what I did. It's like, I'd be just PV on in the background. It's like, I could do one of those. I could do one of those. I could do, and I was, jumping around from genre to genre, mainly rock and pop, but some more emotional cues. I think you play to your strengths.
What are you seeing as far as some of the typical briefs that come across your desk?
It can literally be anything. It can be like crazy elevator music. It can be Cuban jazz, funk, rock. It really, I'm surprised by some of it. Briefs are cool, sometimes you get a brief and like, I don't like that kind of music. I'm just not any good at that kind of music,
Right.
But every once in a while you be something that's sort of unique, but it sort of plays to your strength, like electro swing or something. It's like, well, I'm like a big on actually 1920s music and the chord progressions and all the harmony and the melody and stuff. So just putting it to like, a modern, production values behind that. It was like, oh, yeah, I can do this.
And well, what's kind of interesting about that too is you used a few different services like Fiverr or Musiversal to bring in some additional musicians for
Correct.
Things that you're not necessarily like a saxophone player. So
right.
You'll call in all of these other different people to help with that. So Can you talk a little bit about those types of services where you can hire additional help if needed?
Okay, cool. Yeah, and those services are great. Probably the biggest one is called Musiversal. For $100 a month, I think it is. You have access to, I mean, they don't have a ton of musicians, but they have like 25 different musicians covering the real basics of, horns and drums, bass, synth programming, some exotic percussion, violin, cello.
You hired a mariachi band, right? At one point for one of your tracks?
I did a trumpet guy who basically laid down like 3-part trumpets and it sounded like mariachi.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, it was awesome because he totally nailed the sound. And so, Musiversal, Fiverr, I used some Fiverr people. They were all great. I mean, I didn't really have any issues. I mean, I had a couple of people that were a little flaky or weird, but 80% of my experience, even on Fiverr, was pretty awesome.
Freaking love Fiverr. Oh my gosh, I use it all the time. Do you notice any trends in licensing at all, as far as some of the things that they're licensing from you or licensing from other people? For example, I remember a few years ago, everybody was using bells in every commercial.
Right.
Bells are like whistles and stuff like that.
Oh, right. Like the Glockenspiel indie.
Yes.
Yeah, all that sort of happy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, there are trends. What is the current one? Well, I'm sure there's a lot of things going on. I think like 10 or 12 years ago, it was like, I think people were just watching more cable TV. It was just running in the house. Now everything's streaming and you're not really seeing commercials.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so I feel like I actually have to sit myself down and go like, I need to force myself to take this stuff in.
Right.
Because it was just on the background. It's like, oh, you hear the commercial, you hear the indie pop, the bells and the whistles and, and then you hear the, background music and all these cable reality shows. And it was just sort of basically informing you on what to do. And you get briefs from the music libraries.
As far as licensing of your material, what are you finding that they are using the most of? What genre? And then also, is it vocal tracks, instrumental tracks? It's
probably music that has energy and it's instrumental. Not that that's the only thing that gets used, but that's really the kind of the moneymaker for me. Up-tempo and adds excitement. I think these editors are looking at like, this is kind of slow. Let's throw something in it that bumps up the energy and excitement.
So these pieces are called cues, right?
Correct.
So as far as the cues, do you find that there's a sweet spot in terms of the amount of time? Is it like a minute and a half they're looking for? Is it a full song length?
I think the basic feeling out in the universe is 90 seconds is enough. Some libraries would be like, we don't accept anything under 2 or 3. But I feel like 80% of the people, if you send them something over 90 or longer, are going to be cool. And some people even accept things that are 45 seconds or weird lengths, like that. I tend to kind of go for like a 90 or a 2 or sometimes a 3.
Are you noticing any trends as far as what licensing companies are doing now? Like I've noticed in the last few years that a lot of them have been going exclusive. Have you noticed any more changes in terms of writer splits or publishing or anything like that?
They are definitely going exclusive. And I think a lot of us feared that because, if you give a track to somebody exclusively and they don't license it, you make no money,
Mm-hmm.
So when we first started out, it was retitle publishing, and that still exists. And basically they'll just, you can be used in 100 different libraries. It'll be like, if you called your track Rockstar, they'd be like Rockstar, with the initials of their library on the end of it. Or they would actually just come up with a new name. Sometimes I look at my cue sheet and I'm like, what the heck is Happy Puppy? You know what I mean?
Yeah. But more often than not, I find it's their initials that they use when they retitle.
Which is smart because, sometimes they retitle and it gets very confusing because you have to, look through all your computer and sometimes you'll have a record of what they retitled it or something like that. Because it's good to know which one of your tracks are doing well. It's informative. Sometimes it's just a fluke, you're just in the right editing bay at the right time. I've been doing this a long time and I've seen certain tracks are just like some real simple energy tracks they just keep getting used, They're not brilliant. They're just simple and they have energy.
When you're writing, say, a cue or a song that's meant primarily for a library or a licensing company, how do you gauge whether it's something that you give your A game for or it's something where you just need something that's passable enough to get into the library?
That's a super good question. And I think it's really changing now. I feel like AI is sort of creeping into this, space. And I think AI is probably going to take a lot of, hey, people in our business, like we'll take, we'll be in YouTube videos. We're not too proud. You know what I mean? Just take any kind of usage is good because there's money, there's residuals and all this stuff. But I think stuff that's just like in wedding videos and YouTube videos is going to go probably towards AI or, and I know that you can go on YouTube and use their royalty-free music and stuff like that. I do get a lot of YouTube placements. I don't know what the heck's going on. I just see them like, oh, yeah, okay.
Right.
I don't know what it is, and it's not like a big part of my salary. It's probably 5%, but, it's still something. But I think now with AI, I think it's really smart for all people in this space to really up their game, take more time doing their cues, do things that are human,
Yeah.
and are great and emotional and things that aren't just some sort of wallpaper churn out by, AI or something. Because I've listened to some of this stuff and it's like, yeah, sonically it's getting better all the time, but not to be pretentious, but I do feel like all of our favorite artists, you feel their heart.
Oh, absolutely.
You know what I mean? And there's something that AI robots are never going to get.
Right. What do you think the future of licensing is in terms of opportunities for people who are trying to break into it?
I can't really paint a really optimistic picture of it. When we got in, 15 years ago, really, it was really a really great time. And I think there will be more opportunities. And I'm still in the game full time.
When you say full time, like you make your living with just doing sync licensing.
Yeah. And pretty much the majority of it is the back end, and that's the royalty payments. Them putting you into the shows, you don't get fees. Like I've gotten some, like the theme song for some of these cable shows. This was like 10 years ago, but I got a few of them. They gave me a fee on those. But, but the back end is where it's happening, baby, as far as like the money. It's because it's just like because there's a lot of reruns and it's like just a lot of pennies. A lot of people like me and, people who are way more than me or way further into this than me, you have hundreds of tracks that are in hundreds of shows and it's Pawn Stars from 11 years ago that still plays, 7 times a day.
Right.
You know what I mean? And you get paid for that. So that passive income is a beautiful thing.
Have you noticed that as far as income, is it going down in terms of how much your payouts are because of, say, streaming?
Yes. Yeah, to be quite blunt. There's probably some personal things that there was kind of a library deal that went south, but I've been on some forums with a lot of other sync artists like myself, and it's just the boom is over, and it was a beautiful thing, and I'm extremely grateful, and I'm still getting royalties from shows I did 12 years that I got into 12 years. You know what I mean?
Right.
And this isn't like millionaire stuff. This is just money for hard work. This is almost like a working class job. You can make a living and have a decent living doing this. And, I've done that for like 15 years. Right now, it's a little bit iffy. I'm trying to reinvent myself. I'm trying to compete with AI. I'm trying to, up my game, up my quality. Because I think that, like you said, the libraries are getting much more picky because 10,000 more, there's just like so many more people, musicians and composers and songwriters in the game. We got in when this stuff was obscure.
Oh, yeah. I think the secret is definitely out at this point.
Yes.
But I think, I'm not exactly sure. We were talking about this on the phone earlier. Around the time of like 2007, 2008, I think that was a time when artists could, for the first time, start submitting music on their own to, say, some of these libraries. I could be completely wrong, but from the fact that both of us got in at the same time is an indicator to me.
That's the way it seems to me, yeah.
Yes. So before it was something where it was a record label thing or your manager had a relationship with the music supervisors or whatever. But around that time, like the golden age, we could submit our own material, which was really cool.
Totally. Yeah, it was great because it wasn't just like, well, there's one deal and this person, music supervisor over here wants, this one song. It was just like, send your 100 tracks to all of these libraries That's what I had in 2008. Well, I don't know what I had, but it was a lot, because and you had a few albums, which is great. So you had pre-existing stuff,
Right.
and that really helps. And then once I was in, I'm like, this is awesome. I looked at cue sheets. I mean, all these shows that I'm familiar with. I'm like, oh my God, I was psyched. I was so thrilled.
Well, you were smart about it because you're working with numbers. You have like thousands of tracks. You were smart about it. And that's what I probably should have done looking back in retrospect. But
I mean, you went you did the artist thing where you were a whole different animal and you did it amazingly. I just totally was like, I just do production. I'm not too proud. I'm a behind the scenes production track guy, all my, I chased the rock dream for many decades. Once we both had pre-existing tracks at that time. Once we saw our cue sheets that we're getting all these placements, we're like, and luckily, my finances are like, I could barely get by, but if I lived lean and mean, I could just go in full. And that's what I did. And I just was cranking out tracks left and right up until, a few years ago. It was just the greatest job ever. I was just thrilled. I couldn't wait to wake up in the morning, and just get to work because I thought, wow, I get to do this and submit it to a library and it'll probably show up on a show in in a few months.
Oh, definitely.
And it was exciting, I was all, because once you've been chasing the rock thing, you've been kicked around for a few decades,
beat you up.
Yeah, beat you up. So if you see something that's actually happening and paying your bills, you're just like, I got nothing but gratitude, this is amazing. Lately, it's kind of like we're in kind of this, this weird place. A lot of streaming really payouts don't seem to be as good as cable. A lot of these old cable shows are going on the streaming things.
Yeah.
And, and the payouts aren't as good. So, there's a lot of changes going on that are a little scary. I mean, I think, we both probably have some, residuals coming in our quarterly PRO statements. And it's great, but it's gone down. It's definitely gone down.
How do you think AI is going to come into play here with music writing? As far as AI is concerned, there's so much that it can do. You can ask it to write lyrics for you. Mm-hmm. I believe it can also write melodies for you. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, what do you think that means for people who are trying to write licensing music or people like yourself that are working class musicians?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I've sort of toyed around with the music generating AI. It's been about a month, and I know it gets better by the day.
Yeah.
Back then, I was kind of laughing at it because it was pretty bad. But I mean, as quickly as it churned it out, oh my God, that's a full song in a minute. Yeah, it was decent.
Yeah.
So I think even the songs I was hearing a month ago on AI, I can't remember which one I was on, but I think the internet said it was one of the better ones. I think for some of this stuff, it would be fine. You know what I mean? So that's why I feel okay, to stay in this game, we gotta up our game and really do something that just isn't some generic, spit out of an AI machine. It's got to be something that's really just goes above that. Because I couldn't see any of the stuff that I was sort of prompting and getting being the theme to a big show.
However, that brings me...
I think the robots are going to come and kill me after this.
However, I mean, I've found this even with my own music. I've listened back to some of my music and I'm like, I don't know who picked that. I mean, and this is about my own stuff. I don't know if that necessarily fits here in the spot, but I'm glad that they thought it was appropriate for that.
Right.
But have there been any situations like that for you where you're like, I don't know why the heck they picked this song, or this is a song that I'm not 100% fired up about, but I'm glad that they used it nonetheless?
Yes. And that's so funny because it's it was kind of the forgiving side of this business, because well, this track is barely good enough for me to send it out in the universe. It's okay, whatever, because sometimes, not everything can be great, you just have some days when you write something that's it's fine.
Yeah.
And then you'll see oh my God, that's the one that's killing it,
Right.
And you're almost I didn't write that. Don't tell anybody, but
don't put my name on it.
Yeah. But give me the royalties. Give me the royalties. Yeah.
Exactly.
Totally. There's been a ton of those. And it's hilarious, but you get to be sort of behind the scenes here, so it's no real embarrassment. Nobody knows who the hell we are. But one thing about people getting into this, I think they will seek you out because I think that they'll see you on cue sheets. There are these things that be okay, here's your show, and all the music pieces and how long the duration and the order that they appeared in the TV show. And you see all the composers' names, and you see all the writers and all the people, and they see you and they see me, and if they see a lot of you, they might seek you out.
Right.
They might be like, oh my God, this guy Joe is killing it.
Have you ever found that for yourself, at least?
These libraries that sought me out like 8 years ago or 10 years ago or whatever it was, I never asked them how they got my information. Yeah,
you should have.
I'm a little too polite sometimes. How'd you find me?
Who are you?
Who are you? What the hell do you want? I was just psyched that they did find me, and I was just like, well, okay. Yes, sir. What do you need? What kind of music do you need? I'll get right on it. But this is just a suspicion that like, well, how the hell did they know about me? So I think they were seeing cue sheets and then like, oh, this guy's on a lot of these, NFL games or whatever. It's like, we need more of this kind of stuff. So let's get, there's a lot of people who do this, but I'm sure I was on their list and they just reached out to me and signed me up, and it was great.
Well, I've even seen that in certain libraries. I think it's Epidemic we use for work sometimes, and I see the same composer that's on so much of their website.
Right.
So it's almost like just naturally, because he comes up so quickly and he has so many tracks, I think people just naturally will pick his music.
Totally.
I can't remember what his name is because I would plug him if I knew what it was. But yeah, his stuff is always on there. I always see his name first, and he has like 4 billion tracks on there.
Right. Yeah, there are some people that just like, they just dominate. I mean, they're just guys who probably been started, 10 years earlier, or just really went all in. Because, I was always writing musicals and doing, crazy stuff. I was always trying to, I mean, I was all in, but I wasn't like all in. I don't even really know how to describe it. But I think these people are just like, I am doing this, and probably had a good 5 years. And, you look at the cue sheets and they're just their names everywhere. There are some people that are really huge, and they probably do, pretty darn well. But, there's a term that people threw out, and I think they still throw it out, the middle-class musician. And I think that, like, for the most people in the sync, the sync artist field, it's kind of like a nice middle-class salary for people, and you're doing music. So it's like, I got no complaints about it.
Well, in the next, 5 to 10 years, when robots inevitably take over our field,
yes,
what industry do you want to shift over to?
I mean, I'm already starting to think about it. I mean, I'm not going to jump ship because that would probably be a mistake. So I'm still cranking out cues. I'm working on a cue today. Probably some other creative, thing. I don't know what it is. If, I can impart any advice, it's like, doing what you love. I mean, you just have so much energy. If you just do something because somebody told you it's just a great business idea, but you don't care. I mean, if you love money, maybe you could be like super motivated on that. But if you really enjoy what it is you do, so if you're like somebody who's like has a, my threshold for music, it's like I hardly ever get tired of cranking out music. I have tons of energy for it, tons of enthusiasm for it. So, so I think whatever you do, not even music wise, find the people who need it and get in there and do your thing, and all that enthusiasm will pay off if you're doing the stuff you like to do.
So something that I've been hearing a lot about every time I do this podcast is finding the joy in what you do. And that's something that I think is so important. I'm glad you also brought that up. Happiness, your own personal happiness, means more than anything. And just finding that happiness in whatever it is that you do.
Yes. And I think you can probably find it even if you're, shoveling shit. Sorry, can I say that?
Yes.
Shit's okay.
Yeah.
But, obviously if you're really into music, it's going to be much better.
Right.
I think, so I think that gave me the tenacity to sort of power through. Because I was, like I said, I would literally get up in the morning and be like, wow, what a great job. I'm up at 6. Let's rock. And
you're the only musician that I know.
I know. Your typical rocker would be like, I got up at 6 p.m.
Yeah, exactly.
With a whiskey bottle.
Right? It's like, I got up at 6 a.m. and I took a bong rip and went back to sleep, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, I used to be like that a little bit, but, now I'm just like, in bed by 10 or 11, so I can get up early and...
Yeah, you and me both now.
Do my thing, yeah. I like the morning. I mean, I think I can mix at night, and that's kind of fun. Maybe have a glass of wine or something. But, the morning and a coffee, that's where the stuff gets written.
Right.
That seems to be better. But, people are different,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're like a freak of nature when it comes to the musicians. Just in that you're like, early to bed, early to rise,
Yeah, I totally idolize these brill building people from the 60s. They're just in these tight little cubicles with their shirt and tie on too tight and just cranking out the best songs ever written. It's like, you know what I mean? These aren't
stuffy
these aren't
cubicle.
people falling asleep because they did too many, drank too much or something. It's these are real efficient, early risers, right? In the, some of the greatest, music that, we still hear on the radio every day.
Oh, yeah. Well, I could see them maybe drinking a martini or something.
Yeah, after.
A nice afternoon martini.
Yeah, probably an afternoon martini.
Yeah.
They were probably doing a large coffee and some smokes,
Yeah, exactly.
and at 8 a.m,
Having Coke with the real Coke in it.
Yeah, probably a little bit of that, just real energized morning people.
Song ever today.
Yes. Yeah. Real worker bees.
Yes.
And there's something about the worker bee aspect that appeals to me. I don't know what it is, but it's I know a lot of friends I have to have the, the lava line light just right. And everything is I can write at any time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that, it really is, it's craft. It's not, waiting for the muse to happen, It's just I think writer's block, now we're getting in this weird area, but, writer's block can be a problem, but just allow yourself to write.
Or just ask ChatGPT.
Yeah, or just ask Chat. Yeah, screw everything I've said. Just ask ChatGPT. Never mind. But
sorry, I had to interrupt.
That's totally true. But yeah, people have writer's block. I was trying to help with that. But writer's block is just being too critical of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You can do 7 drafts of your stuff, but if your first ideas are sucky, just do them anyway,
Mm-hmm.
and then refine them.
Right.
But don't stop yourself. Some people be writing a lyric and they'd be like, should I start with the word the? And
yeah.
7 hours later,
oh,
duh. But you and I are pretty much we're stream of consciousness. We just some's good, some bad, and we'll come back and clean it up, but keep it rocking,
Oh, definitely.
Don't get in your own way.
Yeah, or we always have working lyrics, or working melodies.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have any lyrical ideas, you could scribble some stuff down or, just hum the melody in your phone. So at least you don't forget that.
Yeah. Yeah. I do that a lot. These iPhones are great.
Yeah.
It's la, la, la.
Right, exactly. It's freaking fantastic. But I think that's a really good place to stop for today.
Okay.
Dude, it was really, really great seeing you and having you on the show. This has been so educational, and I'm glad that we had you on so you can tell everybody about your journey and also explain how to get into the licensing business. So, dude, thank you for coming
thank you.
out.
Yeah. It's really fun. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, dude. Well,
you rock.
Bump it.
Yes.
All right. Well, as far as everybody at home, make sure to like and subscribe, or as I like to say, smash that like button and smash that subscribe button. We'll see you next time.